I jumped out, heart slamming in my chest, and there he was, Miguel, my best friend, my brother. His body was twisted in a way no living thing should ever be. His bike lay crumpled like a toy beside him. Blood seeped into the concrete, dark and final. I dropped to my knees, calling his name, shaking him, begging. But his eyes, they stared up at the sky, wide, unseeing. The Maserati didn't stop. I caught a glimpse of the driver, a pale kid, early 20s maybe, with a smug face twisted in panic. The plate, partially obscured but not unreadable. I burned it into my memory. JXN 23N. And then he was gone. Cops showed up within minutes. I told them everything, gave them the plate, described the driver, but their eyes glazed over when I said Maserati and Upper East Side. They took notes like they were checking a box, not solving a murder. "Do you have any video evidence?" one of them asked without looking at me. "No, but—" "We'll look into it," he cut me off, already turning away. Hours passed. I sat on the curb, still clutching Miguel's jacket, his blood on my hands. I saw an officer talk to a man in a dark suit who arrived in a black Escalade. They shook hands like old friends. The man handed over a card, whispered something. The officer nodded. No report was filed in front of me, no arrest made. The next morning I learned his name, Jason Bennett, son of Thomas Bennett, real estate magnate, city donor, philanthropist. The story on the news? Cyclist killed in tragic accident, driver fled in panic, investigation ongoing. Ongoing. I wanted to tear the screen off the wall. Miguel was more than a cyclist. He was a father, a friend. He made the best damn Cuban coffee in Queens. We'd driven cabs together since we were 20, and now he was dead. And Jason Bennett was somewhere out there, probably sipping cocktails in a penthouse, already forgetting the sound of Miguel's body hitting his car. But I wouldn't forget. I wouldn't let the city forget. And I sure as hell wouldn't let Jason Bennett disappear. I didn't go back to work the next day, or the day after. I couldn't sit behind the wheel knowing the streets were the same, but my world had fractured. Instead, I went to Miguel's apartment in Jackson Heights. His mother was there, silent with grief, folding his shirts like he'd walk through the door any moment. She didn't speak, just pressed her hand into mine, like maybe through my skin she could still feel her son. The news barely mentioned him. Not one story showed his picture. But Jason Bennett, he was already being painted as a young man in shock, a good kid from a respected family. No charges, no arrest, nothing. So I started digging. First, the plate, JXN 23N. I ran it through every online forum, every sketchy DMV leak I could access through cabbie friends with connections. One name kept coming up, Jason Bennett, 24, last known residence, an apartment in Tribeca paid for by his father's company. I drove out there at dusk, parked across the street, and waited, for hours, just like Miguel and I used to when we hunted for fares outside the financial district. Only this time, the fare I was after owed a hell of a lot more than cab money. That night, I watched Jason step out of the building, laughing with two women, slipping into a private car. Not a care in the world. I recorded it. The next day, I picked up a fare near the Times. An older man in a trench coat who looked like he lived on black coffee and scandal. He worked for the New York Ledger. A columnist. Name was Frank. I told him I had a story, one the police wouldn't touch. At first, he brushed me off. Then I showed him the footage. I showed him Miguel's picture. I told him about the plate, the accident, the silence. He didn't say anything for a while, just stared at the screen, jaw tight. "I'll look into it," he finally said. "But you didn't get this from me. And you sure as hell better be careful." From that moment, I knew. I was on my own. But I had the plate, the video, and now a journalist with a grudge. It wasn't much. But it was something. Over the next week, I picked up rides like usual. But this time, I asked questions. Lawyers, city officials, even a junior cop who moonlit as security for downtown bars. Every name, every snippet of info about the Bennetts I wrote down. I mapped their world. I found their favorite restaurants, their lawyers, their PR firms. Jason Bennett could run, but this city was mine. And I was just getting started. It unraveled faster than I expected. Frank ran the story, a sidebar piece buried under fluff about city real estate, but it had the facts, the plate, the name, the silence. A photo of Miguel smiling in front of his cab. It sparked a flicker, a few online threads, a couple of tweets. Then it died. No uproar, no justice. 2 nights later, I found my cab window smashed, the glove box gutted, nothing valuable missing, except my notebook, the one with all the names, times, places. I filed a police report, standard procedure. The officer scribbled it down, expression blank. When I asked about the Bennett case, he barely looked up. Still under review. That night I drank, more than I should have. The whiskey didn't dull anything. It sharpened it. Around 2 a.m., I went back to Tribeca, stood outside Jason's building, fists clenched in my jacket. I waited. I don't know what for. Him, maybe, or someone, anyone. But no one came. I walked. I ended up on the Queensboro Bridge where Miguel used to ride. I remembered his laugh echoing off the steel, the way he'd waved to me below in the cab, daring traffic, fearless. I leaned over the edge, looked down at the East River, black and bottomless. My fingers gripped the rail so hard they ached. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to find Jason and drag him back by the collar, but I did none of that. I just stood there, cold wind slicing through me, and realized no one was coming. No cavalry, no headlines, no justice. I broke that night. Not in the way people notice. Quietly, inwardly, like a crack running through marble. Almost invisible, but final. The next morning, I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I drove. Nowhere in particular, just away. I thought about quitting, about selling the cab, leaving the city. Maybe justice wasn't real. Maybe Miguel's life was just another name erased by money. But every street corner had a memory. Every traffic light felt like a whisper. He was still here, in the city, in me. So I turned the cab around, headed back downtown, and I started again. By the following week, I was no longer the man who kneeled by Miguel's broken body, desperate and powerless. I was something else, colder, sharper. My grief had hardened into resolve. I wore it like a second skin. I picked up a ride in Soho. She was in her 30s, business casual with an edge. Valerie Price, lawyer for a mid-tier advocacy group fighting police corruption. I knew who she was the moment she got in. I'd done my homework. I asked her if she believed in justice. She laughed. Depends on how rich the bastard is. I showed her Miguel's photo. Told her everything. Just enough. She didn't roll her eyes. Didn't dismiss me. She stared at the dashboard like it held the weight of a verdict. Come by the office, she said. No promises, but come by. I did. She ran the plate through back channels, found a sealed police report marked for special review, a euphemism for buried. Jason Bennett's Maserati had been cleaned within hours of the crash. Security footage from surrounding buildings, lost. Dashcam video from nearby cars, all mysteriously inaccessible. She looked at me across her cluttered desk. You want justice? She asked. You'll have to pull it out by the roots. That night, I contacted Frank again. I told him I had a lawyer. I told him we were going public, not just with names, but with evidence, statements, patterns. I even found a former doorman from Jason's building who saw him come home that night, drunk, rattled, car scratched to hell. We put it together like a case file, a mosaic of privilege and evasion. I uploaded a video, me speaking straight into the camera. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I told the story the way it was. A man killed, a rich kid fleeing, a city complicit. I named names. I showed dates. I posted it everywhere. It went viral. Within hours, local news picked it up, then national. By morning, NYPD released a statement promising a renewed investigation. Valerie got a subpoena issued. Frank's paper ran a front-page piece. Justice for Miguel. Taxi drivers fight against the machine. And then, silence. For 3 days, no word. No response from the Bennetts. No police action. Then, just after midnight on the 4th day, my phone buzzed. I drove to the precinct, parked across the street, waited. An unmarked car pulled up. Jason stepped out, flanked by lawyers, face pale, older somehow. He didn't look smug now. He looked scared. He didn't look at me. But I looked at him, and I didn't blink. The hearing was set for Monday, but I knew better than to trust a date on paper. 2 days before, Valerie called me. They're trying to settle behind closed doors, offer immunity in exchange for testimony on some unrelated case. I laughed. Of course they are. That night, I circled the courthouse. I needed eyes, so I called in favors. Doormen, bartenders, journalists I'd driven, even a kid from Queens who live-streamed protests. I handed them printouts, faces, names. I wanted presence. I wanted the Bennetts to feel the weight of the city they thought they owned. Monday morning came gray and cold. The courthouse steps were crowded. Press activists, people holding up photos of Miguel, candles, signs that said, "No more ghosts." Jason arrived in a navy suit, sunglasses too big for his pale face. His father, Thomas, was at his side. I hadn't seen him before. He looked like the city in human form. Hard, polished, untouchable. As they walked up the steps, I stepped out from the crowd. I didn't speak. I didn't raise my hands. I just looked at Jason. He saw me. He froze, only for a second. But it was enough. His lawyer nudged him forward. They disappeared into the building. Inside, Valerie made her case. Clear. Unshakable. The evidence wasn't perfect, but the story, the truth, was. Jason Bennett pled not guilty. But the judge didn't dismiss the case. A trial date was set. As they exited, Jason turned again. This time, no sunglasses, just his eyes, hollow. I stood still, didn't move, didn't need to, because justice wasn't a verdict. It was a moment, a single, breathless second. Jason Bennett, standing before the city he thought he'd conquered, and knowing it wasn't his anymore.